to one of the most closely watched House primaries is a race that's still to come, which pits two of the biggest names in the Democratic caucus against each other. Democrats Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney debated last night, each declining to say if Joe Biden should run again in 2024, what they do.
Should President Biden run again in 2024?
Yes.
Mr. Nadler.
Too early to say. It doesn't serve the purpose of the Democratic Party to deal with that until after the midterms.
Ms. Maloney.
I don't believe he's running for re-election.
The third challenger.
I'm
sorry,
just got to say, wow.
I'm really thrown off by those answers.
That's interesting because that's news to Joe Biden, I think.
Yeah, the guy sitting there watching these two, I would be very, very disappointed, actually. I really would. It's stunning, actually. And it's a very, very different response that you would see on the other side. Republicans always get around the nominees, sometimes defying gravity, which are their issues. But this is incredible.
Well, you saw the challenger, Suraj Patel, saying Biden should run.
Yes, he did, like easily.
Longtime allies of the president, Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney, are now facing off in the August 23rd Democratic primary for New York's redrawn 12th congressional district, which includes Manhattan's Upper East Side and Upper West Side. While Patel, a political newcomer, says he's within striking distance of the two veteran lawmakers, an internal poll just released by him shows that his campaign is surging. And let's bring in Suraj Patel now. Thanks so much for being with us. We got to say, we're a bit flummoxed by the answer to the Joe Biden question, but not a lot of ambiguity in your answer. Why?
Well, look, first off, last night you saw two very different arguments for New York and for the future. Neither of them could utter a single word about a plan for inflation, for the economy, for the future, or how to win this country back. All they did was do something very self-serving. They saw polling numbers or some absurd Washington Examiner type headline that said young people don't want Biden to run for office, and they threw their own president under the bus, which is a bunch of malarkey. Because I used to work for President Obama and Biden, and President Biden was one of my first bosses. I remember going to a horse farm in Ocala, Florida, doing advance work for him in 2008. Fact of the matter is, Joseph Robinette Biden was the only one capable of beating Donald Trump, and he did. In the first 2 years, he will, after this climate bill, be the most accomplished president since Lyndon Baines Johnson. And as commander-in-chief, he has put Putin in a box. So my question to the chairs of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committee is, what in the heck are you thinking, giving Republican talking points and ammo, and frankly making an ageist argument against your own president? Only one person should decide whether they want to run for president, and that is Joseph Biden.
So, Suraj, let's talk about the dynamics of this race. For people who don't live around here, don't quite understand it. You've got two incumbent congressmen, long time, running against each other because of the redistricting. Now, they both decided to run. So they're old friends. They almost wouldn't criticize each other last night during the debate. You had to kind of hop in and do that for them. But part of the case you're making is, in fact, generational. You said last night, it's 2022. It's time to turn the page on 1992. What do you mean by that?
Well, listen, 1990s politicians have lost almost every major battle to Mitch McConnell and today's Republicans. From abortion to gun rights to climate change, you name it. They don't have an economic argument for the future. And so generational change needs to come to the Democratic Party. It needs to come in a pragmatic way. So, you know, I'm the only candidate in this race who's put out comprehensive plans on the economy, on immigration. We're running this campaign with the same zeal, optimism, and hope that my family brought to this country when they had nothing. I slept on a living room floor until I was in ninth grade, Willie. And yet we are on the verge of pulling off one of the biggest upsets in political history. And the reason is because you can go to my website, which is surajpatel.nyc, and see a differences page. We are significantly different from my opponents. But I want to add one more thing. The reason we are in this race in the first place with Maloney and Nadler is because the two of them conspired to cut young and Latino voters out of their districts when they did their own redrawing of lines. The Times reported it. Kathy Hochul confirmed it. It's a very Tom DeLay-esque move. And so in some ways, this to me is a comeuppance for them to be running against each other with their anti-vax history and their backroom deals and their endorsements of each other. They have no ideas for the future. It's time to turn the page.
Okay, Sam, will you help me with something?
Sure.
If you don't mind. Okay,
I
so
don't mind.
what do you think, what were the, I mean, I don't know, but what comes to mind as potentially the reason that Carolyn Maloney and Congressman Nadler had those answers?
Well, there's only two explanations. One is the one that Siraj was getting at, which is that they've gotten some data or seen some polling that suggests that younger generation of Democratic voters want to turn the page on Biden and they want to hop on that. Two is that Congresswoman Maloney actually has some insider information that she is privy to about the White House's thinking. But if that's the case, she's the only one that I've heard who has that insight, and she should get into the reporting business if she has that scoop. I actually have a question for Siraj about this generational argument. And help me unpack it, because it does seem like you're arguing two sides of the same coin here. You said it's time to move on from 90s-era politicians who have lost all these battles to Mitch McConnell. On the same time, you're crediting President Biden, certainly a politician in the 90s and the 80s, who you say has had the most consequential first term since Lyndon Baines Johnson, in part because he bested or worked with McConnell on the very things that you say Democrats have lost to McConnell on. So those seem like contradictions to me. Can you help me unpack why generational change is needed in your race, but maybe not for the presidential race?
Well, let me just say, one, the president is in a different position. He is the leader of our party, and it is not on us to give Republicans talking points about why he shouldn't run or whether he should run. Now, the distinction about generational change is this. You know, when I went to the Obama farewell address, he talked about how, if you look at the Old Testament and you see Moses gets you out of Egypt, but he says that it is up to the Joshua generation to go forward. I can go no longer. And this is where we are. The party needs bottom-up refreshment and generational change. You know, when we got elected in 2008, we had Democratic senators from states like, Arkansas, Missouri, North Dakota, Indiana, places that you would never think are fathomable now. And the reason is because we worked with the politics of persuasion. We don't find people irredeemable simply because we disagree with them on one thing. You know, Sam, 69% of Americans support Roe versus Wade, but 49% voted for Donald Trump. And what I'm saying is we've got to get new leaders who are fascinated, curious, and interested in figuring out what that 20% delta is and why. And to me, it's the economy, stupid. I mean, you have to talk about inflation. You've got to have people who've been in the private sector and the public sector. I've done both those things. I fought foreclosures. I come from the real world. And New Yorkers are tired of lip service from D.C. politicians who come here, cut ribbons, go back, take credit for the work that hard New Yorkers do. And Sam, it is not I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Carolyn Maloney does not have any insider information that Joe Biden divulged to her. I'm going to tell you that the fact of the matter is that they think maybe they can pull younger voters away from me by throwing their president under the bus. The exact type of triangulation and calculus that gets Democrats in the circular firing squad at all times. People are done with this culture of defeatism in Washington, D.C. from Democrats. We should be celebrating accomplishments, and we should be fixing people's lives.
So let's bring it down to the ground and talk about that. As you know from campaigning, quality of life, crime, top of mind for many people in this city. It's part of the reason Eric Adams was elected mayor last year. Quality of life outranked anything else among voters by a long shot. So what do you propose to do to change this trajectory that we seem to be on, where people are getting shot and stabbed in the subway and people are scared to go out?
Incredible point. I've talked to thousands of voters, literally thousands of voters, and it is the number one issue that comes up. And so I have a three-part plan. One is that we need to reorient policing. You know, last year in New York City, only 60% of homicides were cleared. That means an astronomical 4 out of 10 people who have killed somebody are still walking around. Right. Now, 1990s politicians focused on increasing the magnitude of punishments. Now, unless you believe in reincarnation like I do, multiple life sentences does not create any more deterrence than one life sentence. But being caught might. And so I support Val Deming's Victim Act to allow police officers and police departments to get grants to hire detectives and technologies to increase the homicide clearance rate, to actually solve crime. So that's one. Number two, we've got to invest in place-based interventions. If you go just down the street here to 28th and 7th Avenue near Penn South, or by my house at 14th and 1st near Stuytown, you see that you've got mayhem on the streets where there are no streetlights. Justice Brandeis used to say, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and a street light is the best security guard. We've got to invest in place-based interventions like streetlights, get commerce back up. This is an opportunity crisis. I mean, our unemployment rate in New York is 2.5 times the national average. We've got to get our storefronts reopened. We've got to get a specialized SBA facility that applies this concept across the country, whether it's Little Rock, Arkansas, or New York City, or Dubuque, or Des Moines, Iowa. Getting storefronts reopened to compete with big box retailers and getting commerce back on our streets is something everyone should agree on.
Real quick, cops say you got to fix bail reform. Do you agree with that? They're seeing a revolving door of the same people on the streets with guns every
Now,
week.
I was a proud supporter of bail reform. I don't believe we should criminalize poverty, and I still believe that. That being said, as an evidence-based policymaker, I am not an ideologue, and I do realize that with recidivism and with extremely violent crimes, judges ought to have a little bit of discretion in specific instances to make sure someone doesn't go out and commit the same crime multiple times before they get tried.
Democratic congressional candidate for New York's 12th district, Siraj Patel, now polling closely behind Ann Nadler in that district. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Willie.